It's a good morning to you. Welcome to Asake Online. My name is Zenzele Ndebele. This is the Breakfast Club, a show where we talk about different issues, interesting topics, politics, but sometimes we also talk about entrepreneurial issues and what opportunities are there in our space and the opportunities that we can take up. And in the show today, I'll be talking or having a discussion with Griffin Hammond. He's a documentary filmmaker from Chicago in the United States, and he is here in Zimbabwe, courtesy of the American Film Showcase. He will be doing, or he has been for the past few days, training filmmakers and aspiring filmmakers. He has also managed to, visit a few studios and spaces to see what they're doing. So we want to chat with him to find out how his hustle is going, but his experience as well in Zimbabwe. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate you having me.
Naturally, my first question would be, how do you end up in the film space or the documentary space?
I was drawn to video production for a long time, in high school, but at a certain point, after making lots and lots of videos, I aspired to call myself a filmmaker, and I knew that I needed to make a real film to do that. And so I decided to make a film about something that I love. There's a hot sauce that's produced in the United States called sriracha, and it's very popular in the United States. And I decided I could make a film about that, just something that I love. I really do think you can make a film about anything. Yeah. And so I set out to make this film, and it actually turned out there was a really exciting story there, a really compelling story. And once I had completed that film, I was willing to call myself a documentary filmmaker, and that's what I've been calling myself ever since.
So in the journey, how many documentaries have you produced?
That's the longest one I've ever made. Everything else I've ever made has been shorter form. I do a lot of 5 and 10-minute documentaries. And I guess depending on which ones you define as films versus videos, I've probably made, 100 documentaries, but they're all short. Yeah. So after making that film for myself, I started working for news organizations in the United States. I worked for Bloomberg News, and then later I worked for an organization called The Recount. And in both cases, I was making short-form documentary content about U.S. politics. I primarily cover presidential elections in the U.S.
So for someone, I know a lot of guys here in Zimbabwe, that most of them that we have met, they're aspiring filmmakers. And the question is always, where do I start? And if I produce this documentary, what's the easiest way to get it out in the market?
Yeah. I think the place to start is always the unique perspective that you have. You're always going to be competing with too many filmmakers, and too many platforms, and audiences are fractured. It's hard to reach large numbers of audiences. And I think if you're focused on numbers, you'll always be disappointed, whether you started with 1 million viewers or 1,000 viewers or 2 viewers, you'll always be disappointed if you're focused on the numbers. And so I think what you have to do is find stories that are unique to your perspective, that only you can tell, and stories that you are passionate about. And if you tell a story that you want to see, surely there's other people that have a similar perspective as yours. And so my focus is never on how many people can I reach, but hopefully I can reach the right people, the people maybe like me, because I've found in my career, you never know which films will affect people. And I never know which films and which work I do will lead to another opportunity. And it's surprised me many times which videos, things I was embarrassed by might lead to a career opportunity because someone else appreciated it.
With filmmakers, there's also the issue of equipment. Do I need a truckload of cameras and everything, or do I go basic? And what's your advice to someone who's starting and is worried that they don't have the right set of equipment?
Equipment certainly makes a difference, but my feeling is that it's only us filmmakers when we're comparing 2 shots. How often do you get the opportunity to film the same thing with 2 cameras and really analyze the difference? Audiences never get to see that. So audiences don't know if your film was shot on an iPhone or a Panasonic camera or a Sony camera or a Blackmagic camera. They don't know what microphone you used. They don't know what editing software you used. These are all trade secrets to you. And I always tell young filmmakers and aspiring filmmakers that if you wait around to tell a story until you have the right equipment, you'll never tell a story. And also, the first film you ever make might be bad, and that's okay, because you need to make a lot of work and grow from it. So my advice is to start with whatever gear you have now, whatever gear you're already comfortable with, tell your story, and that will be a great learning opportunity, and you don't know what opportunities will come from that work.
You've been in Zimbabwe for a few days now, interacting with filmmakers in Harare and visiting spaces. What is your impression of the film industry in Zimbabwe?
The film industry, I've met with filmmakers and film stakeholders at the National Arts Council and filmmakers at the Zimbabwe International Film Festival, and I've done workshops with many different groups of journalists and filmmakers and all sorts of artists. And my impression has been that there is a vast amount of talent. I'm impressed by the passion and talent in the rooms, all of the rooms that I've been in. And in many of the rooms that I've been in, the discussions we've had, people are concerned about the ecosystem. There's plenty of talent, but it's hard to make a film when there are forces working against you, economic forces, or if government is not providing incentives the same way that some other countries provide major incentives for filmmakers that make it a little bit easier to find an audience. So those are the kinds of conversations I'm hearing, and I understand the challenges that Zimbabwe filmmakers face.
I know you come from a developed country with quite a lot of opportunities, but in the US, how easy is it for you to get funding to do a film of your choice?
I've never reached out for funding from the government or from a major film production house. Most of the work I do, I've done it as an employee of a news organization. The biggest documentary I did, Sriracha, was self-funded. So I started making the documentary with my own money and then found an audience for it. I built an audience for it before the film ever came out. Whenever there were reporters writing about my film while I was making it, and I made sure that they pushed people to a Facebook page so I could start building that audience. And once I had a lot of people that were excited about the film and ready to support it, to pre-purchase it in advance, I was able to fund the film that way. So I've found some success with self-funding, but I know that that's only gotten harder as more and more people enter these platforms. So I know that I got lucky, and I'm privileged to have access to American audiences.
I mean, these days we talk about the digital spaces and the opportunities that online spaces provide. Do you think it's a sustainable route for young filmmakers to use?
To take their work to the internet?
Yeah.
I think so, if you have the right expectations about where that will lead. Again, monetization through the internet may not get you much. I mean, we see more and more people are uploading content to YouTube, and the YouTube AdSense model, even in the US, doesn't leave filmmakers with a lot of money. Independent filmmaking is not generally a profitable enterprise. And that's why I think you have to be focused on, am I making work that I'm proud of, that I believe should exist in the world? Am I telling stories that I'm passionate about? Because you have to find some gratification in the story being out there. And I made one documentary, Sriracha, that was profitable, and the point wasn't even to make money. It was just to have the story exist. I was lucky that it was profitable. But everything else I've made has been kind of a result of that, or a result of people seeing my work. So hopefully the work that you put out in the world shows what you're capable of, and maybe it will lead to a paid opportunity, a corporate opportunity, a job, that sort of thing.
So you give an impression that this is something that is that needs patience.
Yeah.
The success is not overnight.
Right.
You need to wait for your opportunity, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I was many years into learning the craft. I think I was being very patient and careful about learning the skills myself. But I mean, these are skills that you can pick up in a year, 2 years, 3 years. You can really become an expert in lighting and cameras. It doesn't take all that long to learn these skills. And then once you have them, yeah, you can tell any story you want, but it may not be your first film that leads to any measurable success, but you'll certainly learn from it, and it will help you with your next film.
I know you've not been here for a while. It's less than a week. But what are some of your observations? What have you learned from the people that you've interacted with?
Well, I've found Zimbabwe beautiful, and there's a lot of things about Zimbabwe that make me feel familiar in a way, and make me feel comfortable. Like Sadza reminds me of grits that I grew up with in Atlanta, Georgia. But it's primarily been the people that have impressed me in all of these situations. I've been fortunate that the American Film Showcase has sent me to some very special places around Harare and in Bulawayo, and I've met really talented people. And so I may have a biased view of things just because I've met some of the best and brightest in Zimbabwe, and I've been really honored to be in those rooms with them.
What would you take home? What would you say are some of the things that you say, no, from this trip, I'm taking some of these lessons from?
Yeah. I think mostly it's energy, because I sometimes worry as a filmmaker that I've lost some of the hustle that I had early on. I'm a little bit older than when I made my first film, and I don't know if I can make that film again. So one, that's a lesson for young people, like use your energy, because there are projects you can do that other people can't. But I think I'll go home inspired by the people I've met to take on some of the projects that I've been afraid to take on.
Would I be right to say film is not mainly about resources, but ideas?
I think so. I think story is what's most important. In the workshop that I teach, I kind of start with storytelling, then I go to audio, because I think audio is more important than, recording good audio is more important than many of the visuals we capture in film. And then I focus on lighting. It's like there's many things to focus on before you ever get to cameras. Whatever camera you're shooting on, if you find good light, if you're recording good audio, it will feel professional. But most importantly, audiences don't care about the technical details. Some of us really care about the technical details, but what most audiences really care about is just storytelling. And so, are you telling a story about a character that wants something, that goes on a journey, they face challenges, they come out on the other side of this journey changed as a person? That's a compelling story. And if your film is missing that, even if it's on a super expensive camera, it won't matter. Audiences won't care.
Yeah, and maybe lastly, I would say to someone who is a filmmaker who wants to start and they're worried about building an audience, what would be your advice in terms of how do you build an audience for yourself and your product?
I've found success in diversifying the content I put out there, that whether it's different kinds of films, or for me, it's been, I put out a lot of DIY tutorials. I try to teach filmmaking techniques, because I feel like if I learn something, it's kind of wasted if it stays inside me, that other people could benefit, and it's content I can put out. If there's something that I know how to do and I can share that with people, that makes for a great video. And so I found success building an audience by having a diverse set of content. Some of it's tutorial, some of it's films, some of it's long, some of it's short. I think you have to try a lot of things as a filmmaker to see what resonates with your audience, and also to find out who you are as a storyteller and what your style is.
Thank you very much. That was Griffin Hammond, a filmmaker, a documentary filmmaker from the United States of America. I know most of us during the Breakfast Club, you expect us to talk about politics, but sometimes we need to take a break from the politics and also learn a new skill, talk about experiences of other people who are visiting Zimbabwe. I mean, imagine that we're going to be having elections in July, so you are yet to have quite a lot of politics. But for today, we just decided to go it slow, talk about filmmaking, inspire the young people who would be filming the elections or wants to do documentaries on the run-up to elections and many other ideas that they have. My name is Zenzele Ndebele. Till we meet again in other programs, have a good day.